Hi there. Today we're looking at deep image reconstruction from human brain activity by Guowa Shen, Tomoyasu Horikawa, Kai Majima, and Yukiyasu Kamitani. This is like reading thoughts. So I was excited when I saw this paper. I saw this on Reddit, and it is a bit older. It is from the beginning of last year, so I'm sure there have been developments in this area. But basically, what this paper does is it will have a human look at a picture, as you can see, for example, right up here. It will measure the MRI activity. Then it will use what they call a feature decoder in order to map that MRI activity to features of a deep neural network. And then they will reconstruct the image that is closest to those features in the neural network. And by reconstruction, they get out an image of what the human sees. So we're going to explore this pipeline right here. But it's pretty cool, and if it works, it basically means that we can read someone's thoughts. But of course, there's going to be issues and problems. So first of all, this is all visual. They measure the activity in the visual cortex right here. So let's break it down to the individual parts. The individual parts here, the fMRI, that is a machine we cannot control, right? So you measure the fMRI activity, and that's basically measures which of these cells in your brain use oxygen. It's functional fMRI, it's not structural. So it measures which ones are active, and that's how you would see which parts of the brains are active. And I think the resolution on these things has gotten very, very good. So you can make out very fine-grained activation patterns in the neurons. And they measure the visual cortex, which is the part responsible for basically visual stimuli, so for seeing things. Now, they need this feature decoder, but because ultimately what they want to do is they want to have these features correspond to features in a neural network. This DNN here is like a VGG, I think a VGG16 or a VGG19. It's called a VGG16 network. This is a couple of years ago. These architectures were very popular for ImageNet, and they're fairly basic. So what that means, it's not like a super duper inception net where you have like layers within layers and so on. They're pretty straightforward convolutional neural networks with nonlinearities and pooling. Here you can see there's a bunch of layers, then there's pooling, there's a bunch of layers, there's pooling, and so on. So what you want to look at are these layers of the deep neural network, right? The individual layers, and you want to basically put an image right here into the neural network and then observe its features in the neural network. And then you want to put the same image through the human, and then you observe the MRI features. And you know that this is the same image. So you can basically learn a feature decoder. This is going to be another sort of machine learned, maybe a neural network. I haven't actually read. This could be just like a linear regression or a neural network. Just a regression from that maps the fMRI to the features. So this is what you have to learn. Basically, they took a bunch of humans, stuck them in an MRI machine, right? Got out their fMRI data for the same image. So for a given image X, they got the human fMRI data, and they got the VGG, they got the features when they put the image through the neural network. And now they learn a function that minimizes the error. So there is an error. So basically, they run this on a test set of images, and then you end up with a function that can basically map fMRI features to neural network features. Now the second step, now you you can give the human, let's say this works, you can give the human an arbitrary image, and the human will basically interpret it through its visual cortex. You measure the activity in the visual cortex, and then you can predict the neural network features if that image were given to the neural network. Okay, but now you don't give the image to the neural network. Instead of what you do something like Deep Dream does. That means you start from a noisy image at the beginning and you try to find the image. So you start from this noisy image right here, and through iterative gradient descent you refine this image, and that's this arrow right here. You try to find the image that as closely as possible in the internal representation matches the features that you predict from the fMRI signal. Because these are the features that the neural network should see, right? If your feature decoder is good, these are the features that the neural network should output for that image. So you're basically trying to find this image right here, but you're not looking at it. You only look at the features that should be in the neural network. So after a bunch of steps of refining that image, you basically end up with an image that corresponds to these features, and then you can look at it. And it usually looks something like this. We're used to these kind of things from neural networks. And if I invite you to look at something like the OpenAI Atlas, if you want to understand how this is done, but basically we can get the image that most faithfully corresponds to these features. Now this doesn't always work super well, because there are actually, since the neural network is sort of a dimension reduction technique, there are many images that correspond to the same features, and they often end up like really weird. So what they do is they have this deep generator network as a prior. Basically, this is the generator from a GAN, from a generative adversarial network. So this network right here is really good at just producing naturally looking images. And now, because we have that, our task is not going to be to start from this image right here. Our task will be to do the exact same thing, but with the input to the deep generator network. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the input vector to the deep generator network such that these features right here correspond to the features that we predict from the fMRI activity. And because the deep generator network is trained to produce natural looking images, this will always give us sort of a natural looking image, no matter what our input vector is. So thereby we basically constrain the optimization procedure to only output natural looking images. So let's see how well this works. So these are the reconstructions. I have to say their training and testing set. So up here, this procedure where we learned right here, this would be done on a training set of images, and then they expose the humans to testing set of images. So this reconstruction right here would happen on images that the feature decoder wasn't trained on. But the humans are looking at it. So the humans would be looking at the picture here on the left, and then this would be to the right. You'll see as more and more iterations of this process of reconstructing happens, the image gets basically clearer and clearer. And you can see on the right, you get pretty good looking images for the ones on the left. Now, these researchers, they tout this success, like they say, oh, look at this. But, you know, honestly, like this is a leopard. This is a dog sheep. This is an owl. This is a dog. so you know, this is a fish, and this is like a shell, like a mussel. So and you can go through these, and basically, you know, this is a sled, and then this is a truck. So they go basically and they say, wow, the accuracy is really good. So they do a pixel correlation accuracy, which is, you just try to pixel correlate things, but they have human judgment. The accuracy via human judgment is over 95%. That's crazy. But how do they do it? So basically, they tell you, okay, see, this is the image at the beginning. No, sorry. They give you this image right here as a human rater. And then they give you two other images. They say, okay, here are two images. Let's say these two. Which one did it come from? And if the human can determine it correctly, it counts as a hit. So the baseline probability here is 50%. So basically, right, so this right here, is it rather the owl or is it rather the VCR? And I mean, in that respect, it's pretty impressive what you can read from a brain, but in no way, like zero way, this is reading your thoughts. This isn't like, it seems to basically just reconstruct a example from the ImageNet training set, and the ImageNet Explorer is down right now. So I tried to look at this, but it seems to me it's just kind of reconstructing something it knows that sort of a bit resembles the image on the left. Yeah, but it is not reconstructing that image. Not at all. Like, look, like a bit, but vaguely. But they do some more investigation into this. Okay, so, well, first of all, here you can see what happens without this deep generator network. So when you have unconstrained search, then it is even worse, right? You get like big pixel meshes right here. So you need this kind of prior over natural images. But the prior, I think the prior here comes through a bit much, because the prior might be in part responsible for why the images just show something else than you see. They go into an investigation of and they discover if you use more layers to reconstruct, the reconstruction gets better. So here, according to human judgment, if you just reconstruct from the first layer, you don't get very good reconstruction. But if you incorporate the signal across many layers of the neural network, so you're basically trying to match, to predict many layers of signal, different layers, then the reconstruction gets really good. And we know this from things like style transfer. You can modify how close you are to the original or to the target by basically seeing which layers and how many you reconstruct to which accuracy. So this makes kind of sense. So if you only take the first layer to match the features, then you get basically this blob here. But if you get layers 1 through 7, you get pretty okay-ish thing that looks like this thing. I guess these are without the deep generator network so far, but that is interesting. And I think the novel thing here is, one of the novel things is that they actually use multiple layers of the neural network to reconstruct. The interesting thing is, and I think this is pretty cool, they can now do this with these shapes. So these shapes aren't natural images and they have not been seen in training. But still, as you can see, when the human sees, for example, the plus shape, it will get you a pretty clear plus shape. And it happens for a lot of these things right here. So these are actually, I would say, fairly okay-ish reconstructions of what the human sees. Here, neuron, that is fairly neat. And for the alphabetical letters and shapes, you see again even the pixel correlation now is pretty high, but the human judgment, again, high. And here the human judgment kind of makes sense, right? If you ask, is it like this shape or this shape, then it makes more sense to evaluate it like this. So the shapes, I am fairly impressed that they can reconstruct these shapes. And what they're now trying to do is they're trying to infer imagined images. So basically they're telling a human, please imagine an image, and they show it to the human. So it's not really imagining, it's basically recalling. They show you this image, And then you, whatever, close your eyes, they take the image away, and you just try to imagine that. And you can see through the reconstruction process, that works out, you know, sort of ish, right? You can see that the cross here, it kind of comes through, and the plus kind of, it sort of comes through. And so these are the high accuracy. These are actually the samples where it worked, and there are also samples where it didn't work, like here, where you see it doesn't really come through. So either there is, you know, really a difference between imagining something and seeing something, or this method just isn't very good per se, and you actually need, or humans aren't really good at imagining. Like, there's lots of explanations. And here is the same thing if you imagine these images. Now, they report that if humans just recall or imagine these images, then the reconstruction doesn't work at all. So that might be to the fact that, you know, you cannot, in your recollection, you basically just remember the important things about something. You don't remember the exact pixel values, and therefore your visual cortex doesn't respond in the same way. But I mean, it's interesting even per se to think about it, but I have my doubts about, you know, this entire system, so I don't want to make too many conclusions here about these things. Suffice to say that sometimes it actually can read your thoughts, because if you just think, so this is this stuff up here, if you just think of a shape, it can sort of kind of a bit make out the shape that you're thinking about. All right, this was it for this paper. I'm basically mainly wanted to show you what I found, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed with this, even though like this is a laptop. This is not a VCR. This is a VCR. It's more of a nearest neighbor thing, really, than a reconstruction, I think. But that's my opinion, right? Yes. So if you like this, give it a like, subscribe if you're still here, and I look forward to next time. Bye-bye.